I've spent enough years on this earth to know one thing for certain: the people who save us aren't always the ones we expect. Loyalty doesn't always come from old friends or family. Sometimes it comes from a stranger standing at the edge of a road, someone the world has already written off. I saw that truth proven once, out in Colorado, back when the frontier still had teeth. The ridge trail narrowed to a sliver of packed dirt, behind Cole Harrison. 3 men he'd called partners for 6 years blocked the path. Cole, old friend. Emmett Crane's voice slid out smooth. We gotta talk. Nobody reached for a gun. They didn't need to. Silas grabbed Cole's wrist. Jacob pulled him from the saddle. The ground hit his back hard enough to empty his lungs. They took the saddlebags, the deed papers, the cash from Denver. Emmett crouched close, patting Cole's vest. Where's your daddy's watch? I know you got it. Cole said nothing. The watch pressed cold against his ankle, hidden in his boot, right where his father taught him to keep anything worth dying for. Emmett's smile thinned. 3 pairs of hands dragged him toward the edge. Then came the push, and the sky spun away. And there was only falling. If this story speaks to you, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. And if you've been enjoying these tales without subscribing yet, we'd sure appreciate you joining our little family here. The split oak basket hung heavy on Clara Dawson's arm, full of deadfall branches she'd gathered along the ravine's edge. Sweat darkened the back of her calico dress. Her knees ached from climbing. She almost missed it. A smear of brown among the gray rocks. Wrong color, wrong shape. Clara set the basket down, wiped her palms on her skirt. The slope here dropped steep, loose shale shifting under every step. She grabbed a scrub oak root and lowered herself, 1 foot finding purchase, then the other. The descent took nearly half an hour. Twice she slipped, scraping her palms raw against the stone. The brown was a duster coat. Inside the coat was a man. His face looked like something had chewed at bruises purpling along the jaw, a gash above the left eyebrow crusted black, one leg twisted at a bad angle. Chest rising. Falling. Rising again. Alive. Clara crouched beside him, pressed 2 fingers to his throat. The pulse thumped weak but steady against her skin. Lord have mercy, she whispered. What happened to you? No answer. His eyelids didn't flutter. She looked up the slope. 40 feet of loose rock and scrub brush. No way she could carry him. The man had to weigh near 200 pounds. And Clara, for all the strength years of farm work had put in her arms, couldn't haul dead weight up a cliff face. But there was another way. The deer trail that curved around the ravine's shoulder, where the grade softened to something a body could manage. She stripped off her wool shawl, found 2 sturdy branches wedged between boulders, lashed them together with the shawl's fringe, her fingers working fast, tying the knots her mother had taught her before the fever took her. Getting him onto the travois cost Clara 20 minutes and most of her breath. She rolled him sideways, slid the frame beneath, rolled him back. His head lolled. A groan escaped his cracked lips. Easy now, she said. I got you. She grabbed the branch ends and pulled. Her boots dug into loose dirt. Her shoulders burned. 3 hours it took hauling, resting against boulders to catch her breath, hauling again. By the time Clara dragged him through her cabin door, the sun had bled out behind the western ridge. Her hands shook too hard to light the lamp on the first try. She laid him on her own bed, cut away his torn shirt, 2 ribs broken, maybe 3 the skin mottled purple and green. Then his lips moved. One word. Slurred. Barely a breath. Emmett. Clara's hands froze on the torn fabric. That name. She knew that name. Clara wrung the rag over the basin. Water dripped rust-brown blood and dirt from the stranger's face. She folded the cloth, pressed it to his forehead, and watched his eyes roll beneath closed lids. The fever had taken hold an hour after she'd gotten him inside. His skin burned under her palm. Sweat soaked through the sheet she'd pulled over him. And every few minutes his body jerked, muscles twitching like a dreaming dog's. She changed the compress, checked the poultice on his ribs, yarrow and plantain mashed together, the way her mother used to make it. The smell filled the small cabin, green and sharp. His lips moved. Took everything. Clara leaned closer. His breath came in shallow rasps, carrying fragments of words. Papers. Pushed. Pushed. Clara's hands stilled on the compress. Not fell. Not thrown from a horse. Pushed. She sat back on her heels. The coal oil lamp flickered on the table beside her, casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, crickets sang in the tall grass. A normal night. A quiet night. Except for the dying man in her bed who'd been shoved off a cliff. The stranger's hand moved, fingers clutching at nothing. Jacob. 3 names now. Emmett, Silas, Jacob. Clara didn't know any Silas or Jacob, but Emmett Crane, that name sat in her gut like a stone. She'd seen him ride through the valley twice last spring, always with men flanking him. Always looking at the land like he was measuring it for a coffin. Folks whispered about him buying up water rights, about ranchers who'd refused his offers and found their wells gone dry. She dipped the rag again, wrung it out, pressed it back to his burning skin. "You got yourself in some trouble, mister," she murmured. "Real bad trouble." The clock on the mantel, her mother's clock. The one good thing left in this cabin, ticked past 11. Clara's eyes grew heavy. She'd been awake since before dawn, and every muscle in her body ached from dragging this man up that ravine. She let her head rest against the bedpost, just for a moment, just to close her eyes. The sound jolted her upright. Hoofbeats. More than one horse. Coming fast from the direction of the main road. Clara moved before her mind caught up. She blew out the lamp. The cabin plunged into darkness, lit only by the thin stripe of moonlight seeping through the gap in the shutters. The hoofbeats slowed, stopped, somewhere close. Clara pressed her eye to the shutter gap. 3 riders. Pine-pitch torches in their hands, flames snapping in the night breeze. They'd stopped at old Hendrix's place. She could see the orange glow of his lantern spilling from his doorway, maybe 300 yards down the trail. The riders sat their horses straight-backed, deliberate. Men used to giving orders. She couldn't hear what they were saying. Too far. But she watched Hendrix shake his head, watched him step back into his doorway. Watched the lead rider gesture toward the road that led past Clara's cabin. They were searching, and they were coming this way. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked at the man on the bed unconscious, helpless, burning with fever. If they found him here, they'd finish what they started on that ridge. And then what would they do to her? She crossed the cabin in 3 strides. The root cellar door sat flush with the floor near the kitchen corner, hidden under her mother's rag rug. Clara threw back the rug, yanked the iron ring, and the trapdoor swung open on leather hinges. Cold air rose from the darkness below, the smell of potatoes and damp earth. Getting him down there alone seemed impossible, but Clara had hauled him up a ravine. She could manage 12 steps into a hole. She grabbed him under the arms, dragged him off the bed. His head lolled against her shoulder, and a groan escaped his throat louder than she'd have liked. "Hush now," she whispered. "You gotta be quiet." The cellar stairs groaned under their combined weight. Clara's back screamed in protest. 1 step, 2, 3. She lowered him onto the packed dirt floor, propped his head on a burlap sack of winter squash, and climbed back up just as the hoofbeats stopped outside her door. She dropped the trap door, kicked the rag rug over it, grabbed the butter churn from its place by the stove, something to explain why she might be awake at this hour. The knock came hard and sharp. Clara smoothed her dress, wiped her palms on her apron, opened the door. 3 men on horseback. Torchlight carved their faces into masks of shadow and flame. The one in front had a silver belt buckle that caught the light Emmett Crane. She'd recognize that buckle anywhere. He wore it like a badge. "Evening." His voice slid out smooth, the way oil spreads over water. "You seen anybody come through here, man on foot? Maybe hurt?" Clara kept her hand on the doorframe. "Mister, I don't get visitors. Folks around here don't much care for my company." Emmett's eyes moved over her broad shoulders, her thick waist, the calico dress straining at the seams. His lip curled. "Yeah," he said. "I can see why." One of the others laughed, low and mean. Clara didn't flinch, didn't look away. She'd heard worse. From children, from grown men, from women who should have known better. "Well," Emmett gathered his reins, "if you do see something, you come find us in town. There's a reward for information." "I'll keep that in mind." He held her gaze a moment longer. Something flickered behind his eyes' suspicion, maybe, or just the casual cruelty of a man used to getting what he wanted. Then he turned his horse. "Let's go, boys. Just the pig woman." They rode off into the dark. The torchlight shrank to orange pinpricks, then vanished around the bend. Clara stood in the doorway until the hoofbeats faded to nothing. Her hands trembled. Her breath came short and fast. She closed the door, leaned her forehead against the rough wood. "Lord help me," she whispered. "What have I gotten myself into?" She crossed to the cellar door, pulled back the rug, and lifted the trap door. The stranger lay where she'd left him, pale and still in the darkness below. But his eyes were open now, fever bright, fixed on her face. And when he spoke, his voice came out clear as creek water. "They'll come back. And when they do, they'll burn this place to the ground." Light filtered through flour sack curtains. Thin, gray, the color of early morning before the sun crested the ridge. Cole Harrison opened his eyes. The ceiling above him sat low, rough-hewn beams. The wood darkened with age and smoke. A smell hung in the air, sharp and green. Herbs. Something medicinal. His mouth tasted like copper and dust. He tried to sit up. Pain lanced through his left side ribs, grinding against each other like broken fence posts. His vision went white at the edges. A sound escaped his throat. Something between a groan and a curse. "Nope." A voice. Female. Flat. Don't do that. Footsteps crossed the cabin floor. A woman appeared in his line of sight, carrying a tin cup that steamed in the morning chill. Large woman, broad shoulders, thick arms. A round face with brown eyes that held no particular expression. She wore a calico dress, faded blue, patched at the elbows. "Lie still," she said. "You got 2 ribs cracked, maybe 3. They don't take kindly to sudden movements." Cole let his head fall back against the pillow. The rope bed creaked beneath him. Corn husk mattress rustling. "Where?" His voice came out a rasp. He swallowed. Tried again. "Where am I?" "My place. Edge of the valley. West side." She set the cup on a small table beside the bed. "Found you in the ravine 2 days back. You were breathing. Figured that was reason enough to haul you up." 2 days. Cole's mind grasped at the edges of memory. The ridge trail. Emmett's smile. Hands shoving him toward empty air. "There were men," he said, "looking for me." "Yep." The woman pulled a 3-legged stool from the corner and sat down beside the bed. "They came by that first night. I told them I hadn't seen nothing." "Why?" She shrugged. One shoulder lifted, dropped. "Didn't like the look of them." Cole studied her face. No guile there, no calculation. Just the plain, weathered features of someone who'd spent years working land that didn't care whether she lived or died. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me yet. You still might die." She nodded toward the cup. "Bone broth? Drink it slow, or it'll come right back up." The broth was hot and rich, thick with marrow. Cole sipped it carefully, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. His hands shook when he held the cup, weaker than a newborn calf. "My name's Cole," he said, when the cup was half empty. "Cole Harrison." The woman's expression didn't change. Clara Dawson." She took the cup from his hands, set it aside, and stood. "Rest now. I'll check the poultice in a few hours." Then she was gone, her footsteps retreating through the cabin door, and Cole was left staring at the low ceiling, listening to his own ragged breathing. The days blurred together in a haze of pain and sleep. Cole woke each morning to the smell of herbs and wood smoke. Clara appeared with broth, then with corn dodgers baked in a Dutch oven, their crusts golden and cracked. She changed the bandages wrapped around his ribs without speaking, her thick fingers surprisingly gentle as they peeled away the old cloth and pressed fresh poultice against his skin. The poultice smelled of comfrey root. His mother had used the same thing years ago, when he'd broken his arm falling from the barn loft. The memory surfaced unbidden her hands. Smaller than Clara's, but just as capable, smoothing the paste over his swollen skin. He pushed the memory away. During the day, Clara worked. Cole heard her through the thin cabin walls, the clang of the pump handle drawing water, the steady thok of a hoe breaking earth, the scatter of grain and the answering clucks of chickens. In the afternoon, she came back inside smelling of soil and sweat, and she sat by the window mending clothes while the light faded. She never asked him anything. Not his name again. After that first morning. Not where he came from. Not why 3 men had searched her property in the dark, torches in hand, looking for his body. On the 4th day, Cole managed to sit up without his vision going gray. The pain in his ribs had dulled to a constant ache, manageable if he didn't breathe too deep. "How long?" he asked, when Clara brought his evening meal more broth, this time with chunks of potato floating in it. "How long what?" "Till I can walk." Clara considered the question. "Week, maybe. If you don't do anything stupid." She handed him the cup. "You planning on doing something stupid?" "Not yet." "Good." She left him alone again. On the 5th day, Cole watched her through the window. She stood at a wooden table in the yard, kneading bread dough with both hands, her whole body moving with the rhythm of the work. Flour dusted her forearms. A strand of dark hair had escaped her bun and stuck to her forehead with sweat. He tried to remember the last time someone had done something for him without wanting something in return. His ranch hands wanted wages. His business partners, former partners, he corrected himself, had wanted his land. Even the women he'd courted in Denver had wanted his name, his money, the security of being Mrs. Cole Harrison. This woman wanted nothing. She fed him, changed his bandages, kept him hidden from men who meant to kill him, and asked for nothing. It made no sense. On the 6th day, he asked her, "Why are you helping me?" Clara was wringing out a rag over the wash basin, her back to him. Her hands paused. Water dripped into the bowl, loud in the silence. "You were breathing," she said, without turning. "Seemed like reason enough?" "That's not an answer. It's the only one I got." She went back to wringing, the rag twisted between her fists, water streaming out. "Most folks would have asked questions by now," Cole said. "Where I come from, what kind of trouble I'm in, whether helping me might bring that trouble to their door. I ain't most folks." Clara turned, finally. Her face held that same flat expression, but something flickered in her eyes, something quick and guarded. "You might have noticed." "I noticed?" She draped the rag over the edge of the basin. "You want to tell me your story? You tell me. You don't want to. You don't. Either way, I got chores that need doing and mouths that need feeding, yours included. Now, the rest don't much matter." She walked past him toward the door, paused with her hand on the frame. "Besides," she said, quieter now, "I ain't exactly drowning in company out here. Having someone to talk to, even someone who don't talk much, that ain't the worst thing." The door closed behind her. Cole lay back against the pillow and stared at the ceiling beams. His ribs ached. His ankle throbbed. Every muscle in his body felt like it had been beaten with a hammer. But something in his chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough to notice. He closed his eyes. The 7th morning came gray and cool. Cole woke to the sound of voices outside Clara's low murmur. And another voice, male, older. He pushed himself upright, ignoring the flare of pain in his ribs, and swung his legs over the edge of the bed. His boots sat beside the nightstand. Clara must have pulled them off when she'd first brought him in. He reached for the right one, turned it over, and felt along the inside of the shaft. Still there. His father's watch, tucked into the hidden pocket, sewn against the leather. The voices outside grew louder. The male voice, whoever it was, sounded agitated. "Seen riders again last night, Clara. 3 of 'em, asking questions all up and down the valley." Clara's reply came muffled through the wall, but Cole caught the tone. Careful. Measured. "Ain't seen nobody, Mr. Hendricks. You know I keep to myself." That's what I told him. "But Clara, they're offering money now. Real money. $100 for information about a man matching a certain description." Cole's hand tightened on the watch. $100. More than most folks in this valley made in 6 months. enough to tempt even the most honest neighbor, enough to make a lonely woman on the edge of the valley reconsider who she was willing to protect. The walking stick had taken Clara 3 evenings to carve. Oak, from the old tree that had fallen behind the chicken coop last autumn. She'd stripped the bark, smoothed the shaft with a rasp, and shaped the handle to fit a man's palm. Cole leaned on it now, standing in the middle of her yard, watching her churn butter with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Let me help," he said. Clara's hands paused on the paddle. "You can barely stand." "I can stand fine." He shifted his weight, and the wince that crossed his face called him a liar. "I've been lying in that bed for 8 days. A man's got to do something useful." She considered arguing, decided it wasn't worth the breath. "Fine." She stepped back from the churn. "Have at it." He crossed the yard in slow, careful steps, the walking stick thumping against packed earth. His free hand gripped the churn's paddle. He started working it up and down, the motion stiff and uneven. Milk sloshed over the rim. Clara watched a white stream run down the churn's side and pool in the dirt. She said nothing. Cole adjusted his grip. Tried again. More milk escaped, spattering his borrowed shirt, one of her father's old ones. Too tight across the shoulders, but the only thing she had that fit a man his size. "It's got a rhythm to it," Clara said. "I can see that." "You ain't finding it." His jaw tightened. He kept churning. The paddle caught wrong, jerked sideways, and the whole apparatus nearly tipped over. Cole grabbed the edge to steady it, and the motion sent a visible shudder of pain through his damaged ribs. Clara stepped forward and took the paddle from his hands. "Sit down," she said. "Before you hurt yourself worse." He looked like he wanted to argue, but his face had gone pale, sweat beading along his hairline. And after a moment, he just nodded and limped toward the split log bench beside her porch. Clara went back to churning. The rhythm came easy to her, up, down, the way it had since she was 12 years old, and her mother first put her hands on this same paddle. From the bench, Cole watched her work. "You do everything yourself out here," he said. It wasn't a question. "Ain't nobody else to do it. No neighbors, no hired hands." Clara's stroke faltered. She recovered, kept churning. "Neighbors keep their distance. Hired hands cost money I don't have." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the wet slap of cream against wood. "They called you something," Cole said. "That night, when they came looking for me, the man with the silver buckle, he called you. I know what he called me." Clara's voice came out flat, hard. "Ain't the first time I heard it." She didn't look at him, kept her eyes on the churn, her hands on the paddle, her shoulders squared against the weight of a name she'd carried for 7 years. Evening came slow, the way it did in late spring. The sun hung low over the western ridge, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Clara sat on the porch steps, her mending basket beside her, a torn shirt spread across her lap. Cole sat on the bench a few feet away, the walking stick propped against his knee. He'd been quiet since the butter incident, watching her work without speaking. The needle moved through fabric. In, out, in, out. Clara's fingers knew the motion so well she barely had to look. "Those scars on your hands," Cole said. Clara's needle paused. "Rope burns, mostly. Axe handle blisters that went bad one summer. This one..." She held up her left hand, showed him the pale line running from thumb to wrist. "That was a knife. Slipped while I was dressing a deer. Bled for an hour before it stopped." Cole studied the scar. You dressed it yourself. Who else was going to do it? He didn't have an answer for that. Clara went back to her mending. The shirt was one of her own, the seam at the shoulder coming apart for the third time. Cheap fabric, cheap thread. Nothing in this cabin was built to last. How long you been alone out here? Cole asked. The needle stopped again. Clara looked at him, really looked for the first time since she'd dragged him up that ravine. His face had lost some of its swelling. The bruises had faded from purple to yellow-green, but his eyes held something she hadn't noticed before. Not pity, something else. 7 years, she said. Mama died when I was 18. Fever took her in 3 days. And your father? Gone before that. Went to California looking for gold when I was 12. Never came back. Clara shrugged. Mama always said he'd send for us once he struck it rich. I reckon he either didn't strike it, or he found something better than us out there. Cole said nothing. The silence between them felt different now. Heavier. More full. After Mama passed, folks in town started talking. Clara's hands moved again, the needle finding its rhythm. First it was whispers, then it was looks, then it was children throwing stones at my door and their mamas pretending not to see. Why do folks do anything? The needle bit into fabric, pulled thread through. I was big, I was alone. I didn't go to church regular or smile at the right people or pretend to be something I wasn't. That was enough. She kept her eyes on the shirt, didn't want to see whatever expression was crossing his face. Mama used to say I'd grow into my size. Big bones, she called it. Said I'd be strong enough to run this place alone. Was she right? Clara's hands stilled. She looked up, found Cole watching her with that same unreadable expression. About the strong part. Maybe. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. About the alone part. Well, she didn't know that was going to be the only choice I got. The evening light caught the side of his face, turning his stubble to copper. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and something in his posture shifted opened. That ain't a choice. Clara, that's just folks being too blind to see what's in front of them. The words hung in the air. Clara's needle hovered above the fabric, frozen mid-stitch. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Not in 7 years of isolation and whispers and children's stones rattling against her door. You don't know these people, she said. You don't know what they... I know cruelty when I see it. Cole's voice was steady, certain. I spent 6 years riding with men I thought were my friends, eating at their tables, trusting them with my business, my land, my life, and they threw me off a cliff for what I owned. He paused. His hands clasped together, knuckles white. My wife died 5 years ago. Childbirth. The baby didn't make it either a boy. They told me, though I never saw him. After that, I buried myself in work, building up the ranches, making deals, pretending that money and land could fill up the hole she left. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. Turns out the only thing all that work got me was 3 partners who wanted me dead. Clara set down her mending. Her hands lay still in her lap, palms up, scars visible in the fading light. Sarah, she said, you called out for her. When you were fevered. Cole's face went blank. Then something cracked behind his eyes, quick. There and gone. My wife's name, he said. They sat in silence as the sun sank below the ridge and the first stars appeared overhead. The crickets started up, their song rising from the tall grass. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Clara's shoulders, which had been braced and tight since the moment she'd opened her cabin door to Emmett Crane, slowly lowered. "I should check your bandages," she said, standing. "And get supper started." Cole nodded. He reached for the walking stick, pulled himself upright. Their eyes met. "Clara?" "Yeah, they're fools. Every last one of them." She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. But as she turned toward the cabin door, her hand rose to her face, fingers brushing something wet on her cheek. She wiped it away before he could see. That night, Clara lay awake in the small cot she'd set up near the stove, listening to Cole's breathing from the bedroom. Steady now. Stronger. Outside. The wind picked up. It rattled the shutters, whispered through the gaps in the cabin walls. A restless wind, the kind that meant weather coming. She was almost asleep when she heard it. Hoofbeats, distant but unmistakable, coming from the direction of town. Clara sat up, heart pounding, crossed to the window and peered through the shutter gap. Nothing. Just darkness and the swaying shapes of trees. But the hoofbeats grew louder, closer. And this time, there were more than 3 horses. Cole stood at the cabin window, watching the morning light creep across the valley floor. His ribs still ached a dull, persistent throb that flared when he breathed too deep, but his legs held steady now. The walking stick leaned against the wall, unused for the first time in 3 days. 11 days since the ridge. 11 days since Emmett's hands shoved him into empty air. Behind him, Clara moved through her morning routine. The clang of the pump handle, the hiss of water filling the kettle, the scrape of the stove grate as she stoked the fire. Sounds he'd grown accustomed to. Sounds that belonged to her, to this place, to a life he had no right to be part of. He turned from the window. "I need to tell you something." Clara's hands paused on the kettle. She didn't look up. "You've been working up to this for 2 days now. Might as well spit it out." Cole crossed to the table, pulled out one of the rough-hewn chairs, and sat down. The motion sent a twinge through his side, but he ignored it. "My name is Cole Harrison. I own 3 ranches outside Ridgewater, the Double H, the Broken Spur, and the Creek property up near Miller's Pass. Combined, they're worth close to $40,000. Clara set the kettle on the stove. Her face gave nothing away. "The men who pushed me off that cliff, Emmett Crane, Silas Dorn, Jacob Finch, they were my business partners. We'd been working together for 6 years, buying up land, running cattle, building something." Cole's hands flattened on the table. "I was coming back from Denver with deed papers for a new purchase. Emmett decided he'd rather have my share than split 4 ways. So they threw you off a mountain." "They threw me off a mountain." Clara turned, finally, and leaned against the stove. Her arms crossed over her chest. $40,000, she said. "That's what this is about. That's what they think it's about. They need my signature on transfer documents, or they need proof I'm dead. Either way, they can't claim the land until they've got one or the other." Cole met her eyes. "That's why they keep coming back. That's why they're offering rewards. They're not looking for justice. They're looking for a body." The kettle began to whistle. Clara lifted it off the heat, poured water into a tin cup, and set it in front of him. Coffee, strong and black. "You should have told me this before." she said. I know. I'm harboring a rich man who's supposed to be dead. That's a sight different from helping some drifter who fell off his horse. I know that too. Clara pulled out the chair across from him and sat, her hands wrapped around her own cup. The second cup. He noticed. 2 cups. 1 for each of them. What do you plan to do about it? Cole had been turning that question over in his mind for 3 days. Every plan he'd constructed led to the same problem. The county seat's in Ashford. 2 days' ride east. The sheriff there, Dan Hollister, he knew my father. If I can get to him, show him proof of who I am, he'll have to investigate. And Emmett's been careful. No witnesses to what happened on that ridge. My word against his. Unless I can prove I'm alive and that I never signed those transfer papers. Cole's fingers tightened around the cup. But the problem is, the moment I leave here, you're exposed. If Emmett finds out you've been hiding me, he'll burn this place down. Clara's voice was flat, matter of fact. I heard what he said that first night. I ain't forgotten. That's why I'm telling you now. You've done more for me than anyone in my life. Clara, I won't let you pay for it. She looked at him across the table. Something moved behind her eyes, something quick and unreadable. You got a plan for that. Before Cole could answer, the sound reached them both. Hoofbeats. More than one horse. Coming fast from the direction of the main road, Clara was on her feet before Cole could move. She crossed to the window, pressed her eye to the gap in the shutters. How many? Cole asked. 4, maybe 5. Her voice dropped. Emmett's in front. Cole pushed back from the table. His ribs screamed in protest. The cellar. Go. He moved faster than his body wanted to allow. The rag rug, the iron ring, the trapdoor swinging open on leather hinges. Cold air rose from below, carrying the smell of earth and potatoes. Clara's hand caught his arm. Don't make a sound, she said. No matter what you hear. Cole lowered himself into the darkness. The wooden steps groaned under his weight. He pressed himself against the cellar wall, surrounded by burlap sacks and the thick, musty smell of stored vegetables, and watched the square of light above him shrink as Clara lowered the trapdoor. Then the rug settled over it, and everything went black. The knock came hard enough to rattle the doorframe. Cole held his breath. Above him, floorboards creaked as Clara crossed the cabin. The door opened. Boot heels thudded against wood more than one set. Morning, Miss Dawson? Emmett's voice, smooth and casual like a man discussing the weather. Mind if we come in? Looks like you're already in. Laughter. Low and rough. Boys, check the back room. Under the bed. That wardrobe there. Footsteps scattered. Cole heard drawers opening, furniture scraping across the floor. A thud, someone kicking over a chair. You sure you ain't seen nothing? Pig woman! Emmett's voice moved closer to where Cole crouched. Mighty lonely out here. Might be nice to have some company. Company's overrated. Mister? Clara's reply came steady. Flat. I like the quiet. A pause. Then footsteps slow, deliberate, crossing the cabin floor. 2 cups. Cole's chest seized. Right here by the stove. 2 tin cups. Emmett's voice had changed. His head sharper now. Interested. You expecting someone? A beat of silence. Cole pressed his hand against his mouth, forcing himself not to breathe. "One for coffee," Clara said. "One for water." "That a crime now?" "Just making conversation." More footsteps. The men were moving through the cabin. Cole could track their positions by the creaking floorboards. The bedroom, the kitchen corner, the space near the stove where the rag rug lay. A boot heel thumped against wood, inches from the trapdoor. Cole's hand moved to his hip. Empty. No gun. No weapon of any kind. Just his fists and 2 cracked ribs. "Anything Emmett called?" "Nothing, boss. Place is clean." The boot heel lifted, moved away. Cole let out a slow, silent breath. "Well," Emmett's voice again, closer to the door now. "Seems like we're wasting our time. Seems like—" A pause. Cole could imagine Emmett's face, that thin smile, those calculating eyes. "One more thing. Miss Dawson." "Yeah. If you're hiding something, anything at all, you'll burn with it. You understand this whole place? Everything you got? Ashes?" No response. Just the sound of boots crossing the threshold. The door creaking on its hinges. "Let's go, boys. Nothing here but the pig woman and her sad little farm." Hoofbeats started up again. Faded. Grew distant. Cole stayed motionless in the darkness, counting his own heartbeats. 100, 200, 300. The trap door lifted. Clara's face appeared above him, backlit by the gray morning light. Her expression was the same as always, flat, guarded, giving nothing away. But her hands, gripping the edge of the trapdoor, trembled. Cole climbed out of the cellar. His legs shook. His ribs burned. He looked at the stove, at the 2 tin cups sitting side by side. He noticed. Cole said, "Sasa." "Yeah. He'll be back." Clara didn't answer. She crossed to the window, watched the dust settle on the road where the riders had vanished. "I'm leaving," Cole said. "Tonight. Before they come back." She turned. Her eyes met his. "You ain't healed enough. Doesn't matter." He took a step toward her. His voice dropped. "I heard what he said. Clara, every word. You lied for me. You risked everything for me. And I won't stand here and let you burn for it." Clara's jaw tightened. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "You think running off half-crippled is going to fix anything? You think Emmett won't figure out where you've been the moment you show up in Ashford?" "I don't know. But I know what happens if I stay." Cole's hand found the walking stick, gripped it hard. "You've given me 11 days of your life. That's 11 more than I deserved. I won't take another." Clara stared at him. The silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Then she turned away. "Fine," she said. "But you ain't going tonight." "Clara, you're going tomorrow? After you've rested, after I've packed you food and water and everything else you'll need for 2 days on the trail." She looked back over her shoulder. "And you're taking Molly, my mule. She knows the mountain paths better than any horse." Cole opened his mouth to argue. "That ain't negotiable," Clara said. "You leave tomorrow, or you don't leave at all." He saw it then behind the flat expression, behind the guarded eyes, something she was trying to hide. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Clara's hand rested on the window frame. Her fingers traced the grain of the wood. "I don't know," she said quietly. "But I reckon I'm going to find out." Outside. The wind picked up, rattling the shutters. And somewhere in the distance, a plume of smoke rose from the direction of old Hendrix's place, thick and black against the morning sky. The smoke from Hendrix's place rose until midday, then faded to a gray smudge against the sky. Clara stood at her window, watching it thin and disperse. Old Hendrix had lived in that cabin for 30 years. Now there was nothing left but char and ash. A message? She understood that much. Behind her, Cole sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. He hadn't spoken since they'd seen the smoke. Hadn't needed to. They both knew what it meant. "He'll come for you next," Cole said. "Wow." His voice was quiet, flat. Clara turned from the window. Maybe. Not maybe. He knows something's wrong. The 2 cups. The way you looked at him. Cole pushed back from the table. Stood. His ribs made him wince. But he stayed upright. "I have to leave tonight, Clara, before he comes back." "You ain't healed enough." The words came out automatic. A reflex. They both knew it wasn't about healing anymore. Cole crossed the small cabin in 3 strides, stopped an arm's length from where she stood. "Listen to me," he said. "Emmett Crane burned down an old man's house because that old man might have seen something. What do you think he'll do to you?" Clara's jaw tightened. "I can handle—" "No." Cole's voice sharpened. "You can't. Not this. Not him." His hands rose, fell, rose again, restless, searching for something to hold on to. "You saved my life. Clara, you hid me, fed me, lied for me. And I will not stand here and watch you pay for that with everything you have." The cabin felt smaller than it had a moment ago. The walls pressed in. The air thickened. Clara looked at the floor, at the rag rug covering the cellar door, at her own boots, scuffed and worn. The leather cracked along the seams. "7 years ago," she said, "a traveling preacher came through the valley." Cole went still. His name was Reverend Tate. He was heading east, back to Missouri. Needed help driving his wagon through the mountain pass. Clara's voice came out thin, distant, like she was telling someone else's story. "He offered to take me with him. Said there were churches out east that helped folks start over. Women with no family, no prospects. He said I could have a new life." The words hung in the air between them. "What happened?" Clara's hands curled at her sides. Her nails bit into her palms. "I said no." She heard Cole exhale, a slow, careful breath. "I stood right here, in this cabin, and I told him no." Her voice cracked. She kept going. "I told him I couldn't leave, that this was my home, that Mama was buried out back, and Daddy might come looking for me someday. And I couldn't just—" She stopped. Her throat closed around the words. "Clara, I was afraid." The admission came out raw, ugly, like something dragged up from the bottom of a well. "I was afraid of what was out there, afraid of being laughed at in some new place, by some new set of strangers, afraid they'd look at me the same way folks here do, like I was something wrong, something that shouldn't exist." Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against her thighs to stop the trembling. "So I stayed. I told myself I was being strong. Told myself I was keeping Mama's memory alive. Honoring what she built here." Clara's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "But that was a lie." The truth is, I was too scared to try, too scared to fail, too scared to find out that maybe the problem wasn't this valley, maybe the problem was me. The silence that followed pressed down on her like a physical weight. She couldn't look at him, couldn't lift her eyes from the floor. The shame sat in her chest like a stone heavy, immovable, crushing everything she thought she knew about herself. I ain't brave, Cole. I ain't noble. I'm just a woman who was too scared to leave. And now I'm too scared to make you stay. Her voice broke on the last word. That's the truth. That's all I got. She heard him move, felt the floorboards shift under his weight. Then his hand closed around hers. She looked up. Cole stood close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the lines at the corners of his mouth, the faded bruise along his jaw. His grip was firm, warm. His calloused palm pressed against her scarred fingers. You dragged a dying man up a ravine, he said. You hid him in your cellar while armed men searched your home. You looked Emmett Crane in the eye and lied without flinching. His thumb traced the ridge of her knuckles. That ain't cowardice, Clara. I don't know what to call it, but it ain't that. Her eyes burned. She blinked, looked away. You don't know me. I know enough. Outside, the wind picked up. It rattled the shutters, whistled through the gaps in the cabin walls, the sound of the world pressing in. Clara pulled her hand free, crossed to the stove, her back to him. You should rest, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. If you're leaving tomorrow, you'll need your strength. Clara, there's corn dodgers in the tin. I'll pack dried apples and jerky for the trail. She reached for the kettle, filled it from the pump. The water splashed against the metal, loud in the silence. Molly needs her hooves checked. I'll do that in the morning. Clara. She stopped. Her hands gripped the kettle handle. Look at me. She didn't want to. Didn't want him to see what was in her face, the fear, the shame, the desperate wanting that she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. But she turned anyway. Cole stood in the middle of the cabin, the walking stick forgotten on the floor. His eyes held hers. When I come back, he said, things are going to be different. I swear it. Don't make promises you can't keep. I ain't making promises I can't keep. He took a step toward her. I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm going to ride to Ashford. I'm going to find Sheriff Hollister. And then I'm coming back here. And I'm bringing justice with me. Clara's hands tightened on the kettle. And what about me? What about you? When you've got your ranches back, your money, your life? She set the kettle down. Her voice dropped. What happens to the woman who hid you in her cellar? Cole was quiet for a long moment. That woman, he said finally, is the only person in this valley worth a thing, and I intend to make sure everyone knows it. They sat together until dawn, not touching, not speaking, just present Clara on her cot near the stove, Cole in the chair by the window, the coal oil lamp burning low between them. The night sounds filled the cabin. Crickets. Wind? The distant call of a screech owl. Clara listened to Cole's breathing, steady and slow, and tried to memorize the sound. Sometime after midnight, she spoke. Sarah, she said. Your wife. What was she like? Cole didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough, kind, quiet. She laughed at things nobody else thought were funny. A pause. She made me feel like I was more than what I owned. Clara nodded. She understood that. Understood what it meant to be seen for something other than the shape of your body or the size of your bank account. She would have liked you, Cole said. Clara's throat tightened. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. The lamp flickered. Shadows danced on the walls. When the first gray light crept through the shutters, Clara rose and began packing. Corn dodgers wrapped in cloth, dried apple slices, strips of venison jerky she'd been saving for winter. A canteen filled with water from the pump. Cole pulled on his boots, checked the hidden pocket inside the right shaft. His father's watch glinted in the morning light. Molly's saddled, Clara said. She'll follow the deer trails if you let her lead. Don't push her too hard on the switchbacks. Cole took the saddlebags from her hands. Their fingers brushed. Clara, don't. She stepped back. Just don't. He stood there for a moment, saddlebags in hand, watching her face. Then he nodded. I'll be back in 4 days, 5 at most. I'll be here? He walked to the door, opened it. The morning air rushed in, cool and sharp, carrying the smell of pine and wood smoke. Clara watched him cross the yard to where Molly stood waiting, watched him mount up, favoring his left side, watched him turn the mule toward the eastern trail. He looked back once, raised his hand. Clara didn't wave, just stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, until he disappeared over the ridge. Then she closed the door, pressed her back against the wood, and slid down until she sat on the floor, outside. The morning birds began to sing. The chickens clucked in their coop. The world went on, the way it always did. Indifferent to grief and hope and everything in between, Clara pulled her knees to her chest, pressed her forehead against them. And in the silence of the empty cabin, she heard something that didn't belong. Hoofbeats, coming from the west, the direction Cole hadn't gone. The trail to Ashford took 2 days. Cole rode through the night, letting Molly pick her way along the deer paths Clara had described. The mule moved steady and sure-footed, her ears swiveling at every sound, her hooves finding solid ground where Cole's eyes saw only shadow. His ribs burned with every step. By the second morning, the pain had settled into a constant, grinding ache that radiated from his left side down through his hip. He'd bound the bandages tighter before leaving Clara's cabin, so tight that breathing came shallow and thin. Still not enough. Every jolt of Molly's gait sent fire through his chest. He stopped twice to rest, leaned against boulders with his eyes closed, counting breaths, waiting for the worst of the pain to pass. Clara had packed a small bottle of laudanum, just a few drops. She'd said, enough to take the edge off. He'd used half of it by the time the sun rose on the second day. The town of Ashford appeared at midday, a cluster of buildings huddled around a central square, larger than Ridgewater, but not by much. Cole guided Molly down the main street, past the general store and the land office and the church, with its white steeple catching the afternoon sun. The sheriff's office sat at the corner of Main and Second. A tin star hung on a wooden sign above the door. Cole dismounted. The motion sent a spike of pain through his side, and he grabbed the hitching post to steady himself. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool mountain air. His legs shook beneath him. He pushed through the door. The office smelled of coffee and gun oil. A man sat behind a scarred oak desk, his boots propped on the edge. A newspaper spread across his lap. Gray hair, gray mustache. A face weathered by sun and wind and years of looking at things most men would rather not see. Dan Hollister looked up. "Help you." Cole stepped forward. His legs trembled. His ribs screamed. He braced one hand on the desk to keep himself upright. "Sheriff, my name is Cole Harrison. I own 3 ranches outside Ridgewater. 14 days ago, my business partners pushed me off a cliff on the Ridge Trail and left me for dead." Hollister's boots came down off the desk. The newspaper slid to the floor. "Cole Harrison?" The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Emmett Crane was in here 3 days ago. Said you died in a riding accident. Said he's been handling your estate until the lawyers sort things out. Emmett Crane is a liar, and I've got proof." Cole reached down, pulled off his right boot. The motion made his vision blur with pain. He dug his fingers into the hidden pocket, pulled out the watch, and set it on the desk. The Elgin glinted in the lamplight. Gold case. Roman numerals. The chain his father had worn every day of his adult life. Hollister picked it up, turned it over. The engraving on the back caught the light. "To my son, who will build what I could not, Joba. I know this watch." Hollister's voice had changed. Softer now. Careful. "Your father showed it to me the year before he died. Said he was saving it for you? He gave it to me on his deathbed. I've carried it every day since." Cole met the sheriff's eyes. "I keep it in my boot, he taught me that. Said anything worth dying for should stay close to the ground." Hollister studied him for a long moment. Then he set the watch down and stood. "Emmett filed transfer papers 2 days ago. Claims you signed them before the accident." He crossed to a cabinet, pulled out a folder. "I've got copies here. I never signed anything. I was coming back from Denver with new deed papers when they ambushed me." Cole's hand found the edge of the desk. "Check the signatures. Sheriff, they're forged." Hollister spread the papers on his desk. His eyes moved over the writing, the loops and lines of what was supposed to be Cole's name. "The H is wrong," he said quietly. "Your father wrote his the same way you do. Sharp angles. This one curves." Emmett never could pay attention to details. The sheriff looked up. Something hard had settled into his face. "You willing to swear this in front of witnesses?" "I'll swear it in front of the whole territory if that's what it takes." They rode into Ridgewater at dusk on the 3rd day. Cole sat straight in the saddle, despite the fire in his side. He'd used the last of the laudanum that morning, and now there was nothing between him and the pain but willpower. Hollister flanked him on the right. 2 deputies, young men with serious faces, rode behind. The main street was quiet. A few faces appeared in windows. A dog barked from behind a fence. The saloon sat at the far end of town, its doors swinging open. Yellow lights spilling onto the wooden boardwalk. Piano music drifted out. Something jaunty. Something that didn't fit the cold weight settling in Cole's chest. Hollister pulled up his horse. "You sure about this?" Cole swung down from the saddle. His boots hit the ground, and his ribs sent a bolt of pain straight to his skull. He breathed through it. "I'm sure." He walked toward the saloon. The piano music stopped. Someone inside must have seen him through the window. Cole pushed through the doors. The room fell silent. Emmett Crane sat at a table near the back, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Silas Dorn stood at the bar, his face gray and drawn, dark circles under his eyes like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Jacob Finch was in the corner, playing cards with two men Cole didn't recognize, but his hands trembled as he laid down his cards. Every eye in the room turned to the door. Emmett's face went white. The glass slipped from his fingers, hit the floor, shattered. Whiskey spread across the sawdust like blood. "Evening, Emmett?" Cole's voice came out steady, calm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Emmett's chair scraped back. He stood, hands trembling at his sides. This ain't possible." "Oh, it's possible." Cole stepped forward. The floorboards creaked under his boots. "See? You made one mistake. You didn't make sure I was dead." Sheriff Hollister moved through the doors behind him. The two deputies followed, spreading out to cover the room. "Emmett Crane." Hollister's voice cut through the silence. "You're under arrest for attempted murder and fraud. You and your associates." Silas's hands went flat on the bar. His whole body shook. Cole watched the man's face watch something crack behind his eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Silas's voice came out strangled, broken. "Emmett said it would be quick. Said you'd never know. Said we'd split the ranches 3 ways and nobody would ever shut up." Emmett lunged toward him. "Shut your mouth. You—" "No!" Silas stepped back. His face had gone the color of old ash. "No, Emmett. I'm done. I ain't slept more than an hour at a stretch since we left him on that ridge. I see his face every time I close my eyes. I can't—" His voice broke. "I can't carry this no more." The room held its breath. "We did it." Silas's words came out like a confession in church, raw, ugly, desperate to be free. "We ambushed him on the trail, took his papers, pushed him off the cliff, left him there to die." Jacob made a sound, half sob, half moan. He slumped forward in his chair, head in his hands. "He's right," Jacob whispered. "We did it. All of it, God forgive us. We did it." Emmett stood frozen. His mouth opened, closed. No words came out. Sheriff Hollister moved forward, iron cuffs in his hand. "Emmett Crane, Silas Dorn, Jacob Finch, you're all under arrest." He nodded to the deputies. Take them. The deputies moved. Cuffs clicked around wrists. Emmett's face twisted rage, disbelief, something darker beneath. "You can't do this," he spat. "I've got money. I've got connections. I'll have your badge. Hollister, You'll sit in a cell until the circuit judge comes through." Hollister's voice was flat, final. "After that, you'll answer for what you did." The deputies led them toward the door. Silas went quietly. His head bowed, her shoulders slumped like a man who'd finally set down a weight too heavy to carry. Jacob wept openly, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his cheeks. Emmett stopped at the threshold, turned back to look at Cole. "You think this changes anything?" His voice was a snarl. "You think you've won?" Cole met his eyes. "I think you forgot something. Emmett." He reached into his boot, pulled out the watch, held it up so the light caught the gold. "Dead men can still talk, and they've got long memories." Emmett's face contorted. Then the deputies pulled him through the door, and he was gone. The saloon stayed silent. Cole stood in the middle of the room, the watch heavy in his hand, his ribs burned. His legs shook. Every nerve in his body screamed for rest. But there was one more thing to do. He turned to face the crowd. "Most of you know me," he said. "Some of you don't. But all of you know what just happened here. 3 men tried to steal my land by killing me and forging papers, and they almost got away with it." The faces watched him, some curious, some ashamed, some still processing what they'd witnessed. "But I'm not standing here because of the law. I'm standing here because one person had the courage to help me when no one else would." Cole's voice steadied. "A woman you've all mistreated, a woman you've mocked and avoided and called names that should never be spoken. She found me half dead in a ravine. She dragged me to safety. She hid me from the men who wanted me dead. And she never asked for anything in return." The silence deepened. "Her name is Clara Dawson, and she's worth more than every person in this room." Cole walked to the door, stopped, looked back one more time. "I'm going to her place now, and when I come back to town, I expect things to be different. For her, for all of us." He pushed through the saloon doors into the cool night air. The church bell began to ring someone spreading the news. The sound echoed off the buildings, rolled up into the hills. Cole mounted Molly, pointed her west, and rode toward Clara's cabin. But when he crested the ridge above her property, what he saw made his blood turn to ice. The cabin was dark. The door hung open. And in the yard, illuminated by the rising moon, lay the still shape of a woman's body. Clara woke to the sound of her own name. The ground was cold beneath her cheek, damp. The smell of dirt and grass filled her nose. She tried to move, and pain flared along her temple, sharp, bright, nauseating. Clara, hoofbeats, close. The thud of boots hitting earth. Hands gripped her shoulders, turned her over. She blinked up at the night sky, at the stars spinning overhead, at the face that swam into focus above her. "Cole, I'm all right?" Her voice came out rough. "Wrong." "I'm all right." "You're bleeding." His fingers touched her temple, came away dark. "What happened? Who did this?" Clara pushed herself up on one elbow. The world tilted, steadied. She pressed a hand to her head and felt the swelling there, a lump the size of a hen's egg, tender to the touch. "Emmett's men?" she said. "2 of them. He'd left them watching the cabin before he went to Ashford. They came after you left." She paused, breathing through the dizziness. "Wanted to know where you'd gone. I wouldn't tell them." Cole's face went hard. His jaw clenched. "They hit me, knocked me down." Clara gestured toward the cabin. "Tore the place apart looking for something papers. Maybe. Proof you'd been here." She almost laughed. "They didn't find nothing. I hid everything in the root cellar. And then they left. Said they'd be back with Emmett himself." Clara's hand dropped from her temple. The bleeding had slowed, crusting along her hairline. "I came outside to check on the chickens. Must have passed out." Cole helped her to her feet. His arm went around her waist, steady and sure, bearing her weight without complaint. "Can you walk?" "I think so." They moved toward the cabin together, step by careful step. The door hung crooked on its hinges. The men had kicked it in. Inside, the destruction was worse. Overturned furniture, broken crockery. Clara's mending basket emptied across the floor, spools of thread rolling in every direction. Cole settled her into a chair, found a clean rag, dipped it in the water bucket, and pressed it to her temple. "Emmett's in jail," he said. Silas and Jacob, too. They confessed in front of the whole saloon. Sheriff Hollister arrested them on the spot. Clara looked up at him. The rag was cool against her skin. Her head throbbed. It's over. It's over. Cole spent the rest of the night cleaning, righting furniture, sweeping up broken dishes. He fixed the door as best he could, rehung it on its hinges, made sure the latch caught properly. Clara tried to help. He wouldn't let her. Sit, he said. Rest. You took a hard knock to the head. She sat. She rested. She watched him move through her cabin, putting things back where they belonged, and tried to make sense of what she was feeling. Morning came slow and golden. Clara sat on the porch steps, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Her head still ached, but the dizziness had passed. The swelling had gone down enough that she could see clearly out of both eyes. Cole sat beside her on the steps, his own coffee untouched, watching the sun climb over the eastern ridge. I said some things last night, he said. In the saloon. About you. Clara's hands tightened on her cup. What kind of things? The truth. Cole turned to look at her. That you saved my life. That you hid me from men who wanted me dead. That you never asked for anything in return. The words hung in the air between them. You shouldn't have done that, Clara said. Why not? Because now they'll come here. The whole town. Gawking and gossiping and pretending they didn't spend 7 years treating me like dirt. Her voice came out harder than she intended. I don't want their pity, Cole. I don't want them looking at me like I'm some kind of, they won't be looking at you with pity. Clara opened her mouth to argue. That's when she heard the hoofbeats. Not 2 horses this time, not 3. More, a dozen at least, maybe more, coming from the direction of town. Clara stood. Her hand found the porch rail. Cole? Wait! He walked to the edge of the yard, shading his eyes against the morning sun. The riders crested the hill. A wagon followed behind them, its bed covered with a canvas tarp. More people walked alongside women in bonnets, children in Sunday clothes. Clara's chest tightened. Her breath came short. They kept coming. More faces she recognized. The minister treading her, riding a gray mare. The shopkeeper and his wife. Old Mrs. Patterson, who hadn't spoken to Clara since the day she'd called her mother's remedies witches' work. The procession stopped at the edge of Clara's property. Sheriff Hollister dismounted first. He walked toward the porch, hat in hand, and stopped a few feet from where Clara stood frozen. Miss Dawson? His voice was formal, careful. The people of Ridgewater asked me to convey their thanks. What you did for Mr. Harrison, hiding him, protecting him, lying to men who would have killed you for the truth that took courage most folks don't have. Clara's hands shook. She pressed them flat against her skirt. The minister stepped forward. Behind him, his wife carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth. We owe you an apology. Miss Dawson. The minister's voice was quiet, heavy with something that might have been shame. All of us. For the way we've treated you these past years, for the things we said, for the things we allowed to be said. His wife held out the basket. Fresh bread? Baked this morning? Clara didn't move. Couldn't move. More people came forward. The shopkeeper's wife with a bolt of blue calico fabric, Mrs. Patterson with a jar of blackberry preserves, her eyes wet, her hands trembling as she held it out. A young mother Clara didn't recognize, holding a bouquet of wildflowers her children had picked from the roadside. One by one, they laid their offerings at Clara's feet: bread, fabric, preserves, flowers, a sack of flour, a tin of coffee, a pair of leather gloves, too small for Clara's hands but clearly the best the giver had. Clara stood on her porch, surrounded by gifts she'd never asked for, looking at faces that had avoided her for 7 years. "I don't—" Her voice cracked. She swallowed. "I don't understand." Cole stepped up beside her. His hand found her elbow, steadying. "They're not here for pity, Clara. They're here because they finally see what I saw." He turned to face the crowd. "This woman is the bravest person in this valley. She risked everything for a stranger, and it's time she was treated like she deserves." The minister nodded. Others murmured agreement. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, her hands pressed to her face. Her shoulders shook. She couldn't stop them. 7 years. 7 years of silence and cruelty and children's stones rattling against her door. 7 years of eating alone, sleeping alone, living in a world that had decided she didn't matter. And now this. She felt Cole sit down beside her. His shoulder pressed against hers, warm, solid, real. "It's all right," he said quietly. "Take your time." The crowd stayed for an hour. They helped clean up the mess Emmett's men had made. They brought food into the cabin, stacked supplies in the kitchen corner, mended the places where the searchers had torn through Clara's belongings. The minister's wife swept the floor. Mrs. Patterson organized the pantry. Children chased the chickens in the yard, their laughter carrying on the morning breeze. By midday, they were gone. The wagon rolled back toward town, followed by the riders and walkers. The minister's wife was the last to leave. She pressed Clara's hand, said something about Sunday services, and climbed onto her husband's horse. Then it was quiet. Clara stood in her cabin doorway, looking at the pile of gifts stacked inside. More food than she'd seen in months, fabric for a new dress, tools she'd been needing for years. Cole came up behind her. "There's something I need to say." Clara turned. He stood in the yard, the afternoon sun catching the dust motes floating around him. His ribs were still wrapped. She could see the bandages through his shirt, but he stood straighter now, stronger. "I've got 3 ranches," he said. "More land than any one man needs. More work than I can do alone." He paused. "I need someone I trust to help me manage it. Someone with good sense and strong hands and no patience for fools." Clara's heart beat faster. "I'm offering you a job. Clara, the creek property up near Miller's Pass. A cabin of your own. Land to work. A place where nobody calls you names or throws stones at your door." He took a step toward her. "Not charity. Partnership. You'd earn every cent." And Clara looked at him, at the bruises still fading on his face, at the lines around his eyes, at the way he held himself careful, respectful, waiting for her answer. "What about this place?" she asked. "My mother's buried out back. I can't just leave her." "You won't have to. The creek property's only an hour's ride. You can come back whenever you want." Cole's voice softened. "This place doesn't have to be a prison, Clara. It can just be a place you're from." The words settled into her chest. A place you're from. Not a cage, not a life sentence, just a beginning. "I don't know anything about running a ranch," she said. "You'll learn. I might be terrible at it." "You won't be." Clara looked out at the valley, the same valley she'd stared at for 7 years, trapped by fear and shame and the weight of other people's cruelty. The same hills, the same sky, the same endless horizon. But something had changed. The view looked different now, wider, fuller. "I reckon," she said slowly, "I could learn to manage a ranch." Cole's face broke into a smile, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "I reckon you could learn to do just about anything." Clara Dawson. That evening, a wagon arrived from Cole's ranch. 2 men unloaded furniture, a table, some chairs, supplies for the repairs Cole had planned. And at the end, wrapped in canvas and tied with rope, 2 rocking chairs, oak frames, curved runners, wide seats built for comfort. Cole set them on the porch, side by side, facing west. Clara sat down in one. The wood creaked beneath her weight, then settled. She rocked back, forward, back again. The motion was steady, soothing. Cole lowered himself into the other chair. His ribs made him wince, but he didn't complain. They sat together in silence, watching the sun sink toward the ridge. The sky turned amber, then rose, then deep purple. The first stars appeared overhead. Clara's hands rested on the chair arms. Her shoulders, which had been braced and tight for as long as she could remember, slowly relaxed. "What now?" she asked. Cole rocked beside her, his eyes on the horizon. "Now we rest," he said. "Tomorrow, we start building something new." The evening star rose over the valley. The crickets began their song. And Clara Dawson, for the first time in 7 years, felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. There's a kind of quiet that comes after a story like this one. Not empty, just still. The way a room feels after someone you love has finally fallen asleep. Perhaps you know what it's like to be overlooked, to carry kindness in your hands and have no one reach for it. Many of us have stood in doorways, waiting for someone to see what we've always been. Some of us have been coal-broken by the people we trusted most. Some of us have been Clara, invisible until a stranger looked close enough to notice. These things don't need to be fixed or explained. They just are. And it's all right if something in this story still sits heavy in your chest. It's allowed to stay there, unresolved, the way some memories do. We don't always need answers. Sometimes we just need to know that someone else has walked a similar road. Thank you for sitting with me through these pages. I'm glad you were here.